Hello everyone, this is Damon with Pixnub Software. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to automate composite creation using sports photo automation. Since this is the first tutorial video in the sports photo automation tutorials, I'm going to be keeping this one very simple, and this is just going to be a single player composite, and the template does not have any text files, so we're not going to be using any CSV data in this tutorial. So if you're just starting out with sports photo automation, I suggest starting out with something simple such as this, with just a single player image on a simple background with no text. And then once you learn that, then move on there to the more advanced stuff. So to get started, the first thing you'll need to do is install Sports Photo Automation. Once it's installed, it will be under the Plugins menu, and this is for CC 2022 or higher. That's with SPA 8. This will not run in versions prior to CC 2022. Now, you'll need to set up your template before you can run the batch, but this is very simple. So I'm going to throw this layer group away. And to set up the template, you'll just go into the Setup PSD Template button. I like to dock this user interface too. Just myself, I like to dock it in the Photoshop workspace. It just feels a little bit easier to work with that way. So once that's in there, you'll need to hit Add Player Layer Group, and it's going to add the layer group based on your drop-down selections here, and that's player slot 1, 2, or 3, and this is if you're going to add more than one player, you would add first player 1 and then player 2 and then the third if you want. But in this case, it's just player 1. Then there's 10 different alignment modes, but we'll only be discussing the default alignment mode, which is 1 in this video. So once I hit Add Player Layer Group, it's just going to take a few seconds, and it's going to add a layer group with some setup layers. And these setup layers are what tells SPA where to position the player and how to size the player when it runs the batch. This red box here is going to place the face of your player within that red box and align up their chin to the top of their forehead to that red line and center them within that. Now it does bring in this silhouette image, but that doesn't always represent exactly the height of your player, at least not in player mode 1. Other modes have different alignment methods to align the feet as well, but for player mode 1, it's just going to align and scale based on the face. So what I suggest doing is bringing in one of your own images that is the same pose and roughly the same age group as the batch of images you're going to run. And so if you hit Add Player Layer Image, or Add Custom Player Image, that is. Then it's going to bring the image into the template, and it's going to do the face alignment here and put the image into the template. And so now once you have your own custom image in the template, you'll scale and move that and use an image that represents your photo shoot well. So if you're shooting with different poses, they may not all line up the same way, so it's often best to batch with similar poses too. That way, if you're aligning it off center a little bit one way or the other, it's just going to match the specific pose. And so once we got the image in here, I'm going to actually scale this a little bit more here. Yeah, let's go somewhere like this. Probably good enough for the demonstration here. And this red box here, when it runs the batch, it's going to remove that red box. If you uncheck this and hide that layer, don't delete it, but if you hide it, it's still going to find it in batch. So that doesn't matter, just as long as you still have this layer in here. And so that's it. That's the only thing you need to do with the setup. Other than you need to move this group now where you want it. So when it brings this layer group in, Don't move anything around within the group or move layers outside of the group. Leave everything in the group the way it comes, but you can move that group anywhere within your template. So I'll just drop it in here behind that first layer of fog, because generally you don't always have your images on the very top layer. So wherever they belong in your template, just move them into place. And now that template is set up and ready to go. So if I just save that, it's now ready to run the batch. To run the batch, you just go back to your home menu. So if you were on the setup menu, this bottom button, the home menu, takes you back to the front screen. And then if you hit batch processing, it brings you up your batch processing settings. So when you first start out, you'll have nothing in here. And there's a lot of things you can do here, but for a basic demonstration, or for a basic composite like this that I'm demonstrating, the top 3 buttons are the only things you need to select. Everything else is optional. Of course, you have to select the file type you want to save as, but as far as setup items, these are the only 3 things as your folder. Now, if you click on any of the other checkboxes, it brings up different options, but these are for future videos. This video, like I said, we're keeping it simple. And so let's just grab the player folder and then select a save folder, and then the PSD template file. Now this is the file that I just saved with the setup layers. And then we'll just save it as JPEG, and I'm just going to hit run. So it's going to give you a status in here so you can see the time it's been running and about how long it has left. It's going to calculate that for us after the first image. Now right now it's running a little over 8 seconds an image, which is actually a little bit slower than I got before I was recording the video. I think the screen recording slows it down a little bit. But I'll also show you how to speed this up too. And after this batch, we'll run another batch. I'll show you how to speed this up. If you don't see everything happening on the screen, you don't see the image replacing in there, it actually is. It's just that when it's running the batch, the screen doesn't always refresh. That's Photoshop's way of speeding things up, is to not continually refresh the screen during batch. All right, so we finished at 8.4 seconds an image. Now let's take a look at our composites. So overall, it did really well. You can see that the face is in the exact spot every time. The players are scaled pretty close to being the same. In player mode 1, like I say, it scales just by the face. So different age of people, and even people within the same age group may scale a little bit differently if you're just scaling by the face, because 2 people can be the same height, but have the same height with a different size head, or 2 people can have different size heads and be the same height, or they can have the same size head and be different heights. So just keep that in mind when you're scaling with player mode 1. If you need to place the feet exactly in a certain spot, watch the other video for player mode 2, which I show in a different video. But anyway, that's it for how to do the batch. Now I'm going to show you how to speed this batch up, because there's a very simple way you can get this to run quite a bit faster. We were at 8.47 seconds, so let's do another batch and let's time this and see. Before I do this, how to get this batch to speed up is Photoshop will continue to try to refresh the layers panel and all these panels while it's running. So if you hit the tab key, that hides all of your layer panels. Then if you go into plugins and reopen your Sports Photo Automation so that this is the only thing open and no other panels, it is going to run considerably faster. On average, on Windows, I get about 30 to 40% faster, on Mac about 20, but sometimes on Windows it runs even twice as fast. It really depends on your PSD template. The more layers it has, I found, the more it slows down with those panels open. So now if I go to batch processing, I'm just going to run that same batch. Let's keep an eye on our time to see. So we were at 8.47. Now we're at 5 seconds. So that roughly 35–40%, somewhere in there, if I'm doing my math correctly. So pretty good time savings. And if you were batching 1,000 images, that's going to be a lot of time saving. So whether you want to do this or not, it's up to you, but it's only hitting the tab key and then reopening Sports Photo Automation, and that will speed it up significantly. Now to get back to your Photoshop menu, you just hit the tab key again. And I will show you though, there is a bug that can happen to where your tab key gets stuck inside of the plugin window. Let's see if I can make that happen here. Yeah, like right here, you see where the tab key, now I'm hitting the tab key and it's toggling between the buttons. It's not bringing my Photoshop menu back up. This is a bug that Adobe's known about for about a year. So the issue is the tab key they have tied to the Photoshop panels opening and closing, but they also have it tied to the plugin buttons. So how to fix this is if you see it stuck on the tab key on these buttons, just hit one of the other buttons here, like for instance, set up PSD template. That is going to now unbind that tab key to the Sports Photo Automation window. So now when I hit tab, it brings us back into Photoshop. It's just a weird, quirky thing, and so I wish this wasn't the case. Adobe says they're going to fix that soon, so hopefully they do. All right, I'm going to show you an additional way to speed this up. So let's open up our template here. No, wait, I don't want to be here. Hold on. All right, so a lot of times when you get templates, when you're buying templates, they're pretty high resolution. Now this background, by the way, this is one of the Pixnub templates. And you can get this on our website at pixnub.com. But this is pretty high resolution. It's 6,000 by 4,800 pixels. So if you don't need your background that large, you can reduce the size. And you can also merge some of your layers. So I'm going to do both of those things here and see how much faster we can get this batch to run. Because if you're just printing out 8x10s, you don't need 6,000 pixels. So we also don't need all of those layers. The layers are good for editing the template, but once you have the template look as you want, you can make a new copy to speed up your batch with less layers. So I'll get rid of everything we don't need. Then let's resize this. So let's go 3,000 by 2,400. So that would be 8x10 at 300 pixels per inch. Now let's save this as football 2. All right, now I'm going to hit the tab key again. Let's try to make this as fast as we can. So let's go back here. And now I'm going to run the batch again. And this time I'm going to select that football 2 template. Now when I ran this before I was recording the video, I got 3.1 seconds. So again, the screen recording at 4K video, it slows it down quite a bit, but still we're looking at 4 seconds an image here. On my Mac M1, this same test was less than 2 seconds an image. So very, very fast. And Sports Photo Automation 8 is considerably faster than version 7, especially when we close the Photoshop tabs. And by the way, if you're using Sports Photo Automation 7, don't try to close your Photoshop tabs before running. That will make it slower. And that's because it is already programmed to do that automatically. And if you do that, it will actually open the tabs again when it runs instead of close them. And in the new API here, there was no way to program that in to automatically close those. But it's only the tab key, like I say. Just hit the tab key. Just those couple of mouse clicks, if you're doing a batch of 1,000 images, can save you a lot of time. All right, let's take this one step further here. I know a lot of people, one of the reasons they don't like to automate is because they want to have more control over their images in Photoshop. So there's a few things we can do. The first thing I'm going to demonstrate is this pause to scale. Now if you check this, it's going to pause at the point where it's scaling your image and then continue on with the batch so you can have custom placement of your image. Now if you do this, I don't recommend closing your Photoshop windows because you'll want access to the Photoshop toolbar for your scaling. So let's just hit pause to scale and then run batch. So now when it brings it in the template, we can scale and position this where we want. That way we have custom control, and as soon as we hit the continue button, it's going to save that image and it's going to bring up the next image and it's going to pause again for us to scale that image. So really cool. So if you want custom control but you still want to automate, this is much faster than if you were to open up each image by hand, place your image in, and scale it. Just going to go through these last two really quick. I probably should have only done 3 images for the demo. That way you don't have to watch me do all 5, but whatever, let's get through this and move on to the next topic here. And when you're doing this, you can usually just hit the checkbox. If you have your setup good, oftentimes you won't even need to adjust anything. Now, if you hit the cancel button, it's going to tell you need to use the checkbox. This cancel button will actually abort the batch, so I had to program this in to not do that. So just hit the checkbox when you're happy with it. So one more thing I wanted to show for this first demonstration. And that is the pause on finished image. Now this is different than the pause to scale. This is going to pause after the entire image is completed and give you full access of Photoshop. This is something that version 7 had on Windows, but it didn't really work very well because the old API, I couldn't give you full control of Photoshop very well with it paused. And it was not even an option on Mac. With SPA8, this is an option on both Windows and Mac, and it works flawlessly with this new API. So once it comes to the point where you have the stop or continue buttons both available, at this point we are in Photoshop. We can do anything we want to this image at this point. You have full control of your layers. For instance, I'm going to desaturate this background here. I just did that to give us something visual to see that we are controlling. Let's blur the background. I'm just doing a couple of things just so you can see that we are controlling Photoshop. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But if you needed to clean up your image extraction or do anything else at that point, you could do it. So this just gives us full control of Photoshop, and then once you're happy with how the image looks, you just hit continue. It's then going to bring up the next image, and when it's done, we'll be back in Photoshop again. So I'm not going to continue on with the next 5 or the next 4 because you don't need to watch that. So at this point, you can just hit stop batch. Once you're paused, if you want to ever stop, you can just hit stop, and it's going to stop that batch where it was. There's one more thing I can actually show you now that we did that. If you ever stop your batch, or if the batch just aborts for whatever reason, If you go back into your batch and start it back up, you're going to have the option to resume the last batch. And if you choose that option, it's going to start with the image you were at in the batch. So any images that were already completed, it's not going to redo. So again, we're stopped because I had to pause to access Photoshop in there. So really, really cool. So I hope this teaches you at least how to get going and start with Sports Photo Automation 8. I mean, really, after watching just this first video, you can probably really get going on some automation. And then once you just learn these basics for the single player images, watch the other videos where I will dive deeper into your different alignment modes. You'll want to learn those for sure. And then if you're doing memory mates, how to do your team setups, and you can even put custom logos in your images, as well as the text layer setups. And there's just a lot of things that you can do in SPA, as well as you can even run actions pre and post, before or after the image is run. So you can run an action on the player one image. So if you needed to do some custom things to your image, like sharpen or add some kind of effect, or even if you have an action to extract your image if it's not already extracted. And by the way, that Sports Photo Automation requires the images to already be extracted. But if you had a good action that in images that could be extracted with an action that you know don't need touched up, you could extract them right here. And then you can run a post action on your image, which will run when everything's completed, that you can do any customization to the composite after it's done and have that automated. So just a lot of things in here that you can do. So make sure to watch the other videos as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope this gets you going with Sports Photo Automation.